Hey guys, Brian, Robbie here. Today we're going to be talking about converting more sales with a properly designed PDP, which is your product display page. This is Digital Junto number 5.
Here at CTC, our core competencies are more about getting ads created strategically based on certain demographics and stuff that we've learned from Facebook and just doing the analysis that we typically do. That's kind of the yin to the yang of what Brian and I do here as designers, being once you get them to those product landing pages or just generic landing pages, is getting them to actually convert through the sale. So this whole thing is kind of optimizing your product landing pages or just the rest of your website to better convert sales. So we've broken it down into 3 different pieces. Brian, if you want to dig into that a little bit.
Totally. So as Robbie's kind of explaining, a lot of these people you're funneling in, whether it's through ads, whatever you've got going, but what we want to do is break down the page basically into 3 categories to think of. One is function, content, and design. So content and design are going to come after function. Function's always first, because you could have beautiful pictures, great content, but all that means nothing if the function of the page itself doesn't work, specifically for mobile. Diving deeper into function, we're going to talk about formatting for devices, and Robbie can talk a little bit about that.
Okay, yeah. Majority of web traffic does come via mobile, so especially within kind of younger demographics, millennials especially, 60% of purchases are via mobile phone. So keeping that in mind, and especially with the younger brands, kind of design mobile first. I think if you think with that in mind, you're always going to have more success of getting people to convert, because they're already shopping on their phone because it's easier. So if they're going to have to figure out where things are on your phone, that's going to be a bigger issue for them.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Also with that, know your industry. Some industries are probably a little more desktop heavy than others. I would say in other cases, some are extremely heavy mobile, so maybe up to 90%, maybe even more. So if you know your audience and what they're viewing your website on, always design for that, but most importantly, mobile all the time. Next thing we're going to talk about is load time and speed. So because a lot of people are on their mobile devices, whether they're connected to the internet or just remotely, you want to make sure that if you're using images, whatever you have on there, try to size them down so for a faster load time on the site. Anything that you have on there with a lot of added text or unnecessary icons or images, try to get rid of those. Just lean out your page so that it has exactly what you need on there. The next part of function is talking about page elements, and Robbie can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so having videos and drop downs and different kinds of ways to get your message across, whether you're having accordions that separate or open up for more information about what the product or service does, making sure that stuff formats correctly. If you have an accordion, meaning for those of you who don't know, it's you have basically 2 tabs. When you click them, they separate, give you more information, whether it's imagery or even a video or text. Making sure that's formatted instead of like opening it and having to scroll to the side to read the whole thing, making sure everything condenses best into whatever, whether it is mobile, tablet, or desktop, just making sure everything is optimized best for that. And then for the, moving along to the add to cart checkout process, we talked earlier about getting that whole sales process all the way through checkout. Brian has had a lot of good points on that process and how to optimize it.
Yeah, so the add to cart checkout, when you are making sure that your call to action is nice and bold on the screen, but what happens after they click that, it's super important to think about, because a lot of sites you'll click add to cart, and up in the top corner it may just drop a little one, the items in your cart, but nothing was shown on the screen. So it's really important to either have a menu fly out of the cart that says, do you want to continue checking out, do you want to edit your cart, or continue shopping, whatever it is. Like, make sure that it's clearly shown to the customer that an item was put into their cart and they have something to do after that.
So just to kind of circle back on the whole function piece of this, is that they're already, we kind of mentioned it earlier on, that they're shopping on a phone for that easier experience. So a lot of this stuff is making that experience much easier. Whether it's, if your page takes too long to load, they're gone. You've lost them, because there's so many other things to do on your phone that you just want to make it load, show them that information, click checkout, know that it's in their cart, even redirecting them directly to the cart page to checkout. Everyone's really familiar with ordering on Amazon and how easy that is. So kind of mirroring that process, of course you're not as ingrained with everybody's website as you are in Amazon, but if you can mimic that as a kind of a good bar to kind of reach.
Yeah. So now that we've talked about function and you have all these boxes and things that work properly and all the elements flow on the page for mobile, also on desktop, we move on to the next part, which is content. What goes into those boxes? So the goal with your content is try to engage your customer, use language that they understand. A lot of people in some cases make it really, really wordy on their product pages, and it can distract the customer. You want to just keep it clear to them.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet. Yeah. What are you selling? And let's get to that as quickly as possible, because the goal here is to have them click that add to cart and move on. So in content, the first thing let's talk about is that creative description, and that is basically write a short description. We kind of just touched on that clearly explains the product, engages the customer with a clear value proposition. The next part is benefits and features, which also kind of goes into the creative description.
Why is it different than the other guy?
Exactly.
Your value proposition.
Why do they want to buy it? Let's have them see that and move on.
Yeah.
Another thing to consider on content is videos and images, and Robbie can talk a little about that.
Yeah, it's just, videos are great at explaining your product or service better than anything, because you're basically explaining to them in video versus them having to read. But there's some differences in opinion here, and I think that if they're not necessary, they're just going to bog down the page a little bit more. So what we had talked about earlier in the segment about do we want to wait for a video to load if it's not helpful? Maybe not. Maybe that's on a different page, how it works page, for example. But having that information, if you can get that point across, it's great to have that kind of stuff in there. And you want to touch on the last one here, and then kind of circle back on. Yeah.
So the last one here, in thinking about your content, is reviews. Reviews are really, really, really important. A study shown through, Forbes.
Forbes, yeah.
88% of consumers trust online reviews as much as personal recommendations. So it is huge to make sure that those reviews are as far up the page as possible, because people are guaranteed going to read that.
Yeah.
So that kind of sums up the.
Sorry, you want to talk about reviews? One piece, no, just on that whole design, content piece. This is, the first piece we talked about, and the next piece we talked about are kind of best practices for all companies, where I think the content piece is based more on tell the people who you are, what you do, and why you do it. So that's kind of the open-ended one. Do what you want there, and kind of use these other two pieces that we talked about as kind of like standards of what to go by.
Yeah, just get all the information that best fits your company and properly put that into the right flow for customers, and let's sell that product.
Cool.
The last part is design. Keeping it simple and clean, distraction-free is the goal here, because remember, if a lot of people are on mobile, you're flipping with your thumb and you don't want to have them going down, down, down. So let's try to condense everything as much as possible here. Choosing the right fonts, colors, images, page layout, things like that. So going into these sections a little deeper in design, let's talk about the CTA,
okay,
which is your call to action.
Yeah, so Brian mentioned fonts, colors, all that stuff. Obviously, that should relate to your brand. Strong imagery, strong descriptions, all that stuff we talked about earlier. All of this coming together in a way for them to see it, read it, buy it. And so they see a nice image, they read the title, they see the price, they see the button to add to cart. The call to action, CTA is what we call it. So kind of having that is what we call above the fold. So anything you see on your first glimpse at the page, especially on mobile when you have your thumb on your phone and you can see everything and click buy right away. That's the best case scenario. If there is that much more information above that to where it pushes it down, make sure it's your primo stuff that you want people to understand. And then just kind of some other pieces here that included on a page, or get into that a little bit.
Yeah, so once you kind of figure out your core stuff to keep at the top of the page, your image, your product name, the price, the description, below that, it's really up to you, whatever fits best with your company and what you're trying to sell. Some other things you can use is product sizing, features, benefits, additional images down there, video like we talked about earlier, that can be an optional piece to put in. But overall, that's kind of the flow of the product page. But the main thing here is to always think mobile. Make sure you have a strong CTA. Make sure you get your points across. Keep it clean. Keep it simple. And it's about conversions. Always remember that. So that should be good.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, guys. I know there's a lot to talk about here. There's probably a lot of things we could add into this too. We don't have a ton of time, but we appreciate that. Yeah.
If you have any questions or want some more information, feel free to email us. We can help you out. And thanks for listening.
Awesome.